So so that to me is really devastating because I think it just reinforces, people's perceptions about who domestic violence victims are, when really it doesn't have anything to do with who they are as people. It has everything to do with all of the external factors that are continuing to oppress those populations. So, like I mentioned, we do serve about 1/3 folks who identify as white, 1/3 who identify as Native American, and 1/3 who identify as Black. And then, of course, there's a whole variety of populations that kind of fall into those categories too, as far as being multiracial. And so it really is, it's hard and it's frustrating to talk about that because we know that, that is also representative of poverty. So, so I hope that answered your question. And I mean, I can go on and on, but that's all right. That's good. Mungers? Good. Okay, great. So also at our resource center, we have, it's newish. We have a youth advocacy program. My life before Safe Haven was working in the schools, working with at-risk youth in the schools. And so youth always have a really, really soft spot for me, because I know, and I see. Back in the day, I saw their parents experiencing domestic violence issues. I saw the effect that had on kids. And so when I came to Safe Haven, that was going to be one of my main focus was making sure that our little ones were taken care of. And my colleague at the Resource Center Director, Heather Dries, shared that same vision. And so she wrote up a program for serving youth, and particularly youth who are kind of in that, going between elementary school into high school. So sort of that middle school aged group tends to fall off the radar of supportive services, because when you're a little and you're in school, you have before school care, you're not able to take care of yourself per se. And then when you get a little bit older, kids, especially with younger siblings, start to take care of their younger siblings. And we always want to make sure that our youth are treated that way. And they're expected to be kids when they're with us. And they're expected to have experiences that are going to make them feel normal, and challenge their boundaries so that they can really grow and flourish into the folks that we see and we know that they can be. So our youth advocacy program just continues to grow every year. We have a fabulous summer camp that's coming up here this summer after we took a little bit of a hiatus because of COVID. And our youth advocacy staff work with our kiddos. And sometimes while moms are doing what they got to do during the day to become safe and independent. And then a lot of times they hang out with us during the after school hours. So I get to touch on that a little bit. My office hours are typically pretty late in the evenings, very intentionally. So I can interact with those kids while they're hanging out with our youth advocacy staff. And then the last service that we, well, not the last, but the last one we'll talk about today, service that we offer at the Resource Center is our drop-in center. And so there's so many people that don't necessarily need to leave their home to be safe, leave their home in terms of coming to the shelter to be safe. But there are some things that they want to do. They might be perhaps planning to leave their relationship, but because their phone and computer use is being monitored by their abuser, they come to our drop-in center to be able to do that safely and anonymously. One of the strangest things too that it was strange to me when I first started was learning that abusers will even, control what their victims are allowed to cook for their families. And so we have a little kitchenette at the Resource Center as well. So folks can come in and, make and create any kind of fabulous meal or snack that they'd like to. And they can, of course, spend as much time with our advocates as they need to or want to. And so that's been a really, really popular aspect of our programming as well. And so throughout all of those services, we have about 15 people come through the resource center every year. Of course, that number took a little bit of a dip during COVID while people were pretty much stuck where they were. But we're seeing those numbers continue to increase. And so again, we know that we're reaching people, and that's the most important thing. All right, so ways to support our organization. We, of course, are always so grateful for financial contributions to our work. I just had to do a report on what a person's dollar can do for us. And so the exact number is $7.24, provides one night of safe shelter for a client in our program. A donation of $400 provides a year's worth of services to a client that's coming to our resource center. And so, you know, I was a little bit shocked to see how little it takes to be able to provide a whole new life for someone. And so, you know, I think when folks always ask me, what do you need the most? It's going to be that financial contribution, because we really make those dollars stretch quite far. The other things that we are always in need of, because, you know, with 2,000 people coming through our doors every single year, there are a lot of things that we want to make sure that they have. And for us, you know, it always feels like very basic needs. And those are the things that oftentimes mean the most to people. So hygiene products, you know, when folks come to our shelter, they stay for about 30 days. And so we always give them, you know, full-size shampoo and conditioner. And that is always one that I touch on. There was a woman who came into the shelter one time, and she was just having a really hard time getting through her intake, you know, doing all that paperwork and collecting all those demographics we have to do. And so I said, you know, why don't we just take a break? Let's take a break. Do you want to go, you know, maybe catch your breath? And she said, you know, would it be okay if I just took a shower? And I said, yes, absolutely. Let me get you your hygiene bag. And so we give everyone a hygiene bag that has the shampoo and conditioner, a towel, some soap, you know, just all of those things. And I gave it to her, and she came out of the shower and continued with her intake. And she said, you know, I just had to tell you, like, I will never forget this, you know, the smell of this shampoo, because this is how my life is going to be saved. And so those little things that you don't ever, you know, you don't think about, like you're washing your hair, like, oh yeah, I love this shampoo, it's great. But for her, that's going to be, you know, a scent memory that she will have forever. And I've seen her a few times since she's been in the shelter, and she said, do you remember that strawberry shampoo? And I was like, oh yeah, of course I do. How can I ever forget? Because you know, this is one of the few times I've been able to tell that story without crying. So those things really do mean a lot to folks. And then again, you know, when you're leaving in a hurry because you are traumatized and you have just experienced, you know, some very severe physical and emotional injuries, you're not going to be like, oh, did I pack enough undies for my 30-day stay? No, that is not going to be what's on your mind. So being able to offer folks, you know, new underwear, new socks, new bras, those kinds of things when they come in, really does make all the difference, because it's literally the last thing that people are thinking about when they're leaving. And then of course we have our full list online of the things that we typically accept as well. And then also, if you want to be involved in the work that we do, this is exactly the way to do it. You know, thank you so much for the invitation. And then for the financial contributions, we are the very grateful recipients of coming up in June. Did you say, Kathy? Yes. And so we are so happy to come and talk with you or anybody else that you think might be interested to hear from us. So I think that completes my formal presentation, but of course I could talk and go on and on.
So do people have questions or comments? And if so, you can pop them in the chat or unmute yourself. We've got about 10 more minutes. I have a quick question. How many staff do you have at the shelter? And then
that is a great question. Our full staff list is 32. And of those 32, 5 of us are our administration staff. So me and our finance oh my gosh, she's a wizard, let me tell you, our finance wizard, Andrea, and then our program directors, and then our shelter supervisors. And then our advocates at the shelter, we have about 20 at the shelter. And then the rest of our staff's the resource center and our youth program.
You did a wonderful job, but could you tell me a little bit more about your needs as far as financial? I mean, can you do all the things you want to do with the resources that you now have? And how can we, I think the Mungers maybe could loosen up and give something to this when it comes to our turn. And I would like just to hear how we can, well, what we can do to help and what the need really is.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that question, Mr. Munger. Yes, let me tell you, we
I like that, Mr. Munger. Huh?
My mom raised me right. We sort of have two focus points right now. Our first one is raising the remaining funds for our shelter remodel. So, this building has served its purpose and it has been used hard in these 20 years. And with our expansion, and a little bit also, okay, I always say this remodel, besides the dream itself, could not have happened more backwards if I would have planned it that way. And so we have been able to raise 2/3 of the funding that we need to complete the project. We've got about $1 million left to go. And we are on track to finish it by the end of this year. So at the end of this calendar year. And so that's one of our main focus right now is working on raising the remaining funding for the remodel project. It's hard for nonprofits to take out a loan because retiring the debt is not a very glamorous investment when we ask for support. And so, we're trying really hard to not have to do that. And kind of have that sort of lingering in the background of our routine programming that we'll have to do. So we've got $1 million left to raise. If anybody has successfully played and won the lottery, you just give me a call. I will let you know exactly where that investment can go. And then as far as our regular services, our ongoing services, because we are going to be expanding the reach of what we're able to do and who we're able to serve, we need to increase our staff capacity pretty significantly. I would say we need probably about 10 more staff people to be able to provide the high quality service. And we want to be able to also support our staff so that they don't have to have additional part-time jobs, or this is something that they can do, as a career. And so I think, one staff person, full-time staff means it's probably too much information for you all, but I mean, we're old friends now at this point. So, to be able to have one staff person with all of the benefits to make them, comfortable and still not at the top tier of service provider salary. It costs us about $75,000 a year and a little bit more if they have kiddos too that hop on our benefits. So, we've got a ways to go to get to being able to have our full capacity in our brand new space, but we're on the right track.
Jan McGree was the next one, had a question or a comment.
Oh, excuse me. I recently heard from Jackie Christensen, excuse me, that Sean Florkey helped to develop several different kinds of services at the courthouse, and one of them had to do with women. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on what you saw after his work when people came back and were pleased with their encounters with him. It's just something we didn't have time for before.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, we miss Judge Flurkey on the bench. Like, I cannot even tell you. It sort of feels like we've lost a limb in some ways because he's now moved on to the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation. And so what he recognized as in complete alignment with our mission and providing support for survivors was pretty incredible. There's one specific case that I can remember like it was yesterday, although it is not, because her youngest child that was a baby at the time is now 8. So I don't know where time goes, but he was the judge that was presiding over her case, and her case was very complicated. She had her kids, has 3 children. Her abusive partner had taken her out of state and essentially had kidnapped her, taken her all over the country. And then was, just the most horrific abuse you can imagine during that whole time when she was so far away from her support system. And when she came back to Minnesota, Judge Flerke really set some parameters in place and said, these are the things that we need you to do, and you can do it, and we're going to be there to support you. And so, and that has pretty much been our experience with him and the programs that he created. Our criminal justice system, it has its flaws. The law is the law is the law. And so whenever we find an ally that is able to help us navigate any of those additional barriers, that's going to be something that we hold on to pretty tightly. So Judge Flerke's work really made a huge difference in how we go about doing our work. And nobody's been able to do it quite like him, but we kind of always harken back to those days when he was around. And I know that he is still always willing and able to make some calls on our behalf if it's needed.
We have two questions in the chat. What about emotional abuse? Does everyone at your shelter suffer physical abuse? And the other one is, do children ever come on their own?
Oh, good questions. So, physical and emotional abuse, of course, go hand in hand. Okay, I'll try to keep it brief because I know we don't have a lot of time. What we formerly, folks coming into the shelter didn't always show signs of physical abuse, but you can see the emotional abuse on their face. They are a shell of the person that they were. And they have no sense of self-worth, and don't feel like they're worthy of help and support, which is oftentimes why folks return to their abusive partner. And so, so of course, all types of abuse do intertwine, but not everyone experiences physical abuse. And sometimes the emotional abuse, I've heard from survivors very specifically that they wish that the abuse that they endured would have been physical, because they know that those physical wounds will heal, and they have no idea where to start with addressing their emotional wounds. So that's been a pretty powerful experience for us as advocates as well, to do our best to figure out how to walk through that with them. And do children ever come to the shelter on their own? It gets so complicated with kids because, we sometimes know that we are the safest place for kids, especially kids that are a little bit older, 16, 17, 18. If they're reaching out to us on their own, it's because they need it. It's not because they're trying to run away from home to be a little stinker, like they need it, and they have sought us out. And fortunately, we have a really strong relationship with Lifehouse, which is the organization that serves youth in our community. And so we're able to make those connections and do a warm handoff from, a youth who was in our shelter to Lifehouse to get the support that they need. And sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes they need to be in our shelter. And so we navigate that really delicately. We are able to house unaccompanied youth with the permission of their guardian. And if their parent happens to be abusive, that adds another layer of complication as well. But again, we've been around for a long time. And so we have lots of cell phone numbers of people that we can call at any hour of the day or night to help us navigate any of those complicated situations. And then we are able to provide shelter to youth in some circumstances.
I see that the Mongers have something else. I do just want to say, though, that our formal forum is now ending.